Welcome to Essentials Week 23. Here are some fun, fresh ideas to help you as you finish out the home stretch this year. Essentials of the English language. Here's a snapshot of what will be covered in Week 23 of Essentials. The structure we'll be reviewing is the compound-complex structure. We will review all 4 purposes that have been previously covered this year. The pattern we'll focus on this week is SVT-IODO, or subject, transitive verb, indirect object, direct object. There will be several parts of speech this week. These include a review of adverbs as well as introducing subjunctive mood with verbs. Let's take a closer look at the compound complex sentence structure. Throughout the course of the year, your child has mastered simple, compound, complex sentences and now has moved on to compound complex. In order to ensure that he or she understands what each of these structures looks like, it's important to take time to build from simple to compound to complex, ending with a compound complex sentence. Here's an example of how you can do this at home. First, start by creating a simple sentence with your child. Our example here is, the car was red. Next, add on to this sentence by adding a coordinating conjunction and an independent clause. Our compound sentence here now changes to, the car was red and it was fast. Next, take a moment to create a complex sentence. Our example here is, the car, which was red, was fast. Notice that the complex sentence has a dependent clause. In this case, the words which was red serve as our dependent clause. Finally, take your compound and complex sentence and mesh them together to create a compound complex sentence. Our example here is, the car, which was red, was fast, and it sped down the road. Notice in this sentence that we have 2 independent clauses. The car was fast, and it sped down the road. What makes this a compound complex sentence, however, is the addition of a dependent clause, which was red. So our final sentence, the car, which was red, was fast, and it sped down the road. This is a great example of a compound complex sentence. Take time to encourage your child to build his or her own sentence from simple to compound to complex, finally to compound complex. Week 23 of Essentials also contains a review of adverbs. Adverbs have been previously covered during this Essentials year. However, since this is a part of speech which has been previously covered, it's possible to review and build on your child's knowledge of this part of speech. A list of adverbs can be found on Chart I. Let's take a moment to review the definition of this part of speech. An adverb modifies a verb, adjective, or another adverb. Some types of adverbs are much more easy to recognize in sentences. Let's look at our sample sentence below. The paint was still quite wet for 2 hours after she had completely finished. Because of knowing about ly adverbs, our Essential students quite often recognize them right away. However, there are 2 additional adverbs in this sentence which are not so easily recognized. The words still and quite. Refer to your Essentials of the English Language Guide for more examples and take time to point these out to your student. Week 23 also continues on with our 3-week study of verbals. This week, we introduce the gerund. A gerund is a present participle verb form used as a noun. A gerund is a word that usually ends in ing and is typically an activity noun. Take a moment to look at the picture on the screen. An activity that you can complete with your child this week is taking a typical verb and then changing it into a gerund. Let's look at 3 verbs which are inspired from this picture. We have the verbs swim, float, and smile. All 3 of these verbs can be changed into gerunds simply by adding ing. Swim changes to swimming, float to floating, and smile to smiling. Take a few moments this week to review the difference between a gerund and a participle. A gerund is used as a noun, whereas a participle is not. Take a few moments to take these newly formed gerunds and put them together into a sentence to demonstrate this. For example, our sample sentence might read, swimming, floating, and smiling are 3 things I plan to do this summer. Let's move on to the final concept covered in Essentials of the English Language during week 23. This week, you'll be introducing the subjunctive mood to your Essentials student. Let's take a moment to review the 3 moods which have been studied so far this year and are expressed in English. These are indicative, imperative, and subjunctive. If your student is not on his or her second or third tour, this concept may be very difficult to grasp. Please make certain that your student understands that the subjunctive mood implies a wish and may not be fact. Here are 2 examples of the subjunctive mood in sentences. Our first sentence reads, I should have called the police. Our second sentence reads, I could eat more ice cream. For more examples of the subjunctive mood, please refer to chart EE in your Essentials of the English Language Guide. And now on to math. For math this week in Essentials, it's a good idea to have access to a deck of cards as well as a number knockout board. Here's an example of a game that you can play at home this week with your Essentials student. The name of this game is Flip Out, and in order to play, you need to have a deck of cards. Have your student flip 2 cards from the deck and either add or multiply the 2 numbers together. You can set a timer for 5 minutes and race against the clock to see how many pairs you can collect. In order to have variations on this game for ability, you can take out face cards to make the game simpler, or you can give face cards number values to increase the difficulty of the game. If your Essentials student hasn't been introduced to Number Knockout yet, now is a great time to do so. You can download a free game board from www.nationalnumbernockout.com, or you can create your own game board by counting with your child's favorite number. All you need is a blank piece of paper with 36 boxes drawn on it. In the first box on the top left of your game board, you'll write your child's favorite number. Then add that number again to your child's favorite, and that sum will go in the second box, and so on until you have a completed game board. If your student has played Number Knockout before, this week you could try a new variation. Typically, when Number Knockout is played, 3 dice are rolled, but this week you could try rolling 4 dice instead. You could also try using the typical 3 dice, but using one number that's greater than 6. Finally, another variation is to hold all 3 numbers in your head, not writing them down after the dice have been rolled. Let's move on to our final component for week 23, writing. In week 23 of writing, we will continue our study of Unit 9, critiques. So let's take a moment and let's review. What is the difference between a book report and a critique? A book report will typically simply report information, whereas a critique will analyze a book and make recommendations based on that analysis. Here are several helpful things that you can do to assist your student as he or she writes a critique this week for essentials. First, review the structure of a critique. This structure can be found in Medieval History-Based Writing Lessons, page 240. The 5 parts of a critique include an introduction, the setting and characters, the conflict and problem, the climax and resolution, and finally, the conclusion. Also, it's helpful this week to review the purpose of a conclusion. Help for this can be found in the Medieval History-Based Writing Lessons book on page 241. Finally, as this critique paper is concluded, you're going to want to review the purpose of an introduction. Help for this is found on page 243 in Medieval History-Based Writing Lessons. As you assist your child as he or she finishes up this critique, remember, some students may not be drawn to a book in order to write a critique. If your child is fascinated by a particular movie, that may be an opportunity for you to alter this assignment slightly in order to harness the enthusiasm that he or she may have for this project instead. Have a great week 23, and don't forget to check out CC Connected for more resources and information.